What's up guys, Lucky Locks here. Welcome back to another LFA video. This is going to be for LFA 113, Lewis versus Peterson, and there's a couple of really good fights on this card. I think it should be a nice way to spend a Friday night, so I'm looking forward to getting right into it with you guys, and without further ado, let's just hop into the first fight of the night here on the main card. First fight of the night, we have Angiano coming up against Jordan Nicholatti at 125 pounds. So Angiano 3-0, only 22 years old, so still very young. 4-fight win streak if you include her amateur career. She was supposed to fight Marisol Ruelas at LFA 101. Obviously, that fell through, didn't end up happening. All three of her pro fights were in 2019, so that's a bit of a layoff. But, like I say, I don't really mind it that much when it's younger fighters who have these layoffs. At just 22, she would have been about 20 years old at the time of those last pro fights, so I feel like she's using that time really well, making a lot of improvements in the off time. I just feel like she probably has used that time well. So 2 round 1 knockouts and a split decision in her last bout. Most recently, she can be a bit of a wild striker at times. Not super technical. Sometimes it turns into a bit of a brawl, but I'm sure she's made lots of improvements in the last 2 years. She's down at 125 here from 135, and that could be either good or bad because her last fight was at like a catch weight of like 139 or 140 pounds or something like that. And, she looked like she was pretty big for the weight class there. So if she does have a successful weight cut here and everything goes as planned, she'll probably have a pretty decent size advantage in this one, I feel like. She just kind of has a bigger frame than Nicholatti, in my opinion. And looking at Nicholatti, a.k.a. Jordan Kaze, she's had a name change. Obviously, I think she must have gotten married and changed her last name because she used to go by a different last name. And don't be fooled by that 0-1 record because she was a 7-1 amateur. Her pro loss was obviously in her debut. It's the only one she's had. That was to Claire Guthrie, formerly Claire Johnson. Also had a name change there. And she's pretty solid as far as opponents go in your debut. Guthrie is 2-1 on Invicta, 1-0 on LFA. She was also a 7-1 amateur fighter coming into that bout. And, Nicholatti has the advantage of being more physically mature than Angiano here at the age of 30. Maybe that comes with some extra strength there, but Angiano does look like she is a little bit bigger, so I'll be interested to see if that actually comes into play at all. Nicholatti also hasn't fought since 2019, so we have to take that into account. She'll have a nice 3-inch reach advantage on Angiano in this one, and Nicholatti is normally a 125er, whereas Angiano looked like a pretty big 135er last time. She's down at 125 here. Nicholatti is comfortable in the boxing range. That reach advantage will be nice, if she can kind of use that to her advantage. She likes to come forward, likes to pressure, can be a little bit hittable at times. But Angiano's last fight, she was backed up quite a bit, so that's a little bit worrying. This fight kind of feels like a coin flip, kind of feels like a toss-up to me. I'm really not confident at all. I pretty much have no confidence in this pick, but I'm going to slightly lean with Angiano just because she has more pro experience, she's younger, better momentum coming into this one, and I just feel like she's probably made better improvements in her game. But, we'll see what happens. But, yeah, I'm going to go with Angiano in this one, but not confident in it. Not going to bet it. But, yeah, moving right along. Now we have Alden Korea and Donnie Baloo at flyweight here. Korea 4-0, really promising 125-pound prospect. I really like what I've seen out of him so far. He's looked great in all the fights that we've seen him in. He's an athletic guy, only 23 years old, on a 9-fight win streak, including his amateur career. He never lost a fight as an amateur or a pro, so he's never lost yet, which can be a little bit worrying. But I do like him in this matchup. He's got 3 finishes as a pro. He's a crisp striker and just a good grappler as well. Just really athletic. I like his technical skills as well. And looking at Baloo, 7-4, 30 years old, 2-3 in his last 5, and that's not really against great competition. Baloo was 8-7 as an amateur. That kind of worries me a little bit too. Now, I'm not sitting here saying that Korea has fought unreal guys. The level of competition definitely hasn't been high for him either, but he's never lost, and he's put on a lot of dominant performances. So, Baloo is a grappler, normally lives and dies by the submissions, and I mean that pretty much literally, because literally every single loss he's had has come by submission, and every single win he's had has also come by submission. So he's choking you or you're choking him out, one or the other. Korea is a great grappler, and I think he's just going to give this guy trouble, man. I really like the matchup for Korea in this one. I feel like he's a somewhat safe pick. I do have him on a parlay, so yeah, Korea is going to be my pick in this one. And that's going to bring us to Steve Jones and Chris Brown at welterweight. So Steve Jones, 8-2. Just put up a pretty good fight against Nikolai Veretennikov, lost a unanimous decision. I was on Veretennikov for that one. And Jones made me sweat just a little bit. Jones, he also has a win over Tyler Ray on LFA by split decision, and Ray is a really solid prospect out of Sanford MMA, so that's a nice win. I definitely value that. I don't take that lightly. Jones is a good striker, a nice distance control, patient and opportunistic, pretty good boxer, has some power in his hooks, has some nice accurate combinations, when he gets into rhythm in the pocket, nice jab to the head and body, just good boxing fundamentals overall for MMA. Didn't really deal with the kicks and the knees of Veretennikov that well in his last fight. I definitely don't believe that Brown, I'm not going to say that Chris Brown is any Nikolai Veretennikov, but he does like to use those kicks quite a bit, so that's going to be an area that I'm kind of iffy on here for Steve Jones, but that's where Veretennikov had a lot of success. Jones is a bit of a headhunter at times. I'd like to see him vary his strikes a little bit more, add in some kicks a little bit more than he does. He does have the ability to get the fight down. Obviously, that's going to be difficult against a solid guy like Veretennikov, but he was able to actually do it. Ended up getting into trouble in the tie clinch, though, gassed out a little bit late and was eating some knees. But overall, he's a really solid and talented fighter. I like what I see out of Steve Jones. On the Chris Brown side, he's 6-3. I think he's a little bit better than what his record indicates. I picked him as a dog last time out, and he cashed. That was against, I believe it was Kelvin Rayford was his last fight. And he has some nice kicks that he can use. Likes to use that lead leg to keep the distance. He's a Jackson Wink product. Can swing a little bit wild at times. And all of his losses have been in tough fights. Ignacio Bahamondes, that's a UFC fighter. Carrington Banks, he was an Ultimate Fighter contestant and a Bellator fighter later on. And Thomas Gifford had a UFC stint. And, Brown was an undefeated amateur. I don't know if he'll be able to form effective resistance against a really tough and technically sound Steve Jones. I feel like he is going to try to use those kicks to keep the distance, but I think overall I just feel like Jones is going to be able to cut right through him with that boxing and probably do some damage in the pocket. So I think I'm going to go with Steve Jones in this one to get the job done. So that's going to bring us to the co-main event of the evening, and that's going to be Ricky Camp versus Greg Fischer at 135 pounds. Camp is 11-4. His last loss was in 2015, so I think it's safe to say that's in the past. One of his 4 losses was Trevin Jones. That's really not a bad loss either. But other than that, in terms of competition, it hasn't really been great, to be honest. He's a physically strong and pretty built guy for 135 pounds. Definitely has some power at the weight class. His hands are quick, and that right cross is quite heavy. He's an aggressive fighter. Has shown some wrestling and grappling as well. Not really sure that's his best path against a guy like Greg Fischer. Fischer is 10-2, and let's keep in mind that he was a -170 favorite over Jimmy Flick in his last fight, and that's saying something. Obviously, he went on to lose that fight very quickly, but that's Jimmy Flick for you. The guy can lock up a submission. Sometimes there's just nothing you can do when you're in the cage with that guy. He hasn't really faced the creme de la creme, but he does have some decent wins. Blaine Shutt is a pretty decent win, and he was a champ in his local Shogun promotion in Baltimore, Maryland. He was at Jackson Wink prior to that fight with Jimmy Flick, and that fight was at 125 pounds. He is up at 135 here. He has a wrestling base. He's a good fighter. And, he was looked at as a really promising prospect before that Flick fight, and a bunch of people were kind of looking at him differently now. And I'm just wondering, if he never drops that fight, what does the line on this fight look like, right? So Camp actually opened up as the underdog here, and Fischer was the favorite, and that's since shifted in Camp. We're looking at Camp at about, I want to say maybe like a -140. So this is another really tough one to call. I see some people pretty confident in Camp. I am not among them. I think I am going to go with Ricky Camp in this one to get it done. I just kind of like the physicality that he brings, but I'm definitely not counting out Greg Fischer. I think he has a real chance to shock people and get a win in this one. So this is another fight that I'm not going to touch. Really not interested in this from a betting perspective, just because I feel like it's a pretty evenly matched fight. Good job to the matchmakers on this one. It's a tough one to call. And I am going to just lean very slightly with Ricky Camp in this one, though. So that'll be my pick, but, as I say, definitely not confident. And that's going to bring us to the main event of the evening for the LFA Heavyweight strap. We have Vernon Lewis and Thomas Peterson. And Vernon Big E Lewis is 8-4. He's fought the much better competition of the two guys. He is older at 37 years old, has a slight height advantage and a big 6-inch reach advantage in this one. I believe that Lewis is better on the ground. He has heavy ground and pound and also has pretty good submission offense. I think he's definitely the better jiu-jitsu player of the two. He's just much more experienced overall. He has way more fights. He won a decision over Jared Vandera, UFC fighter, so I just really like the look of that as well. Peterson has never fought anybody like this before. This is his toughest matchup, I think, by far, in my opinion. Lewis is just much more experienced, fought better guys, beaten better guys, and I just feel like he's a more well-rounded fighter as well. Looking at Thomas Peterson, I really like Thomas Peterson, by the way. Don't take it as me trying to disrespect him whatsoever. I really like this guy. I've actually never picked against him before, and he's never let me down. So you'll see what I'm about to say about him anyway. So he's 4-0 as a pro, 5-0 as an amateur on a 9-fight win streak overall. He's got heavy hands, lots of power. Like I said, I never picked against the guy, but here's where I get off the train. So I did bet Lewis for this one at plus 315. He is now on Tuesday here, anywhere from plus 145 to plus 155. Too many question marks about Peterson, in my opinion. He's never been out of the first round as a pro. He's also never really faced anyone that good, if I'm being completely honest, and he just really hasn't faced adversity at all. We don't know anything about his gas tank. I know he does have a wrestling base, but is he going to have wrestling success against Big E? I don't know. Peterson could very well come out here and sleep Lewis, or maybe even put on a wrestling clinic. Who knows? But the bottom line is we don't know, and me personally, I haven't seen anything to make me believe that he will. So plus 315 on Vernon Lewis here was a must bet for me. I logged into my book so fast when I saw that line. Do I think that Vernon Lewis is a lock? Not at all. But do I think he's should be plus 315 ever against Thomas Peterson? Hell no. So yeah, I bet that line super quickly. I'm really happy with that bet actually. Now when it's at 145, 155, I mean, I still like Lewis, but it's getting to the point where do I really want to throw money on him? I don't know, just because I feel like this is kind of a volatile matchup. And like I said before, I do have a lot of respect for Peterson and just his overall game and the power that he has in his hands, but I don't know, Vernon Lewis at that kind of price was like I said, pretty much a must bet for me. So I'm actually going to go with the underdog, Vernon Lewis, in the main event in this one. And yeah, that's going to do it for my picks in this one, guys. Thank you once again for joining me for this video. I really appreciate everyone who takes the time to interact with me, comment, like, subscribe, all of that good stuff. I really appreciate it. Hope you guys have a great day. Take care, and I will catch you on the next one for some Bellator 263. So yeah, in the meantime, take it easy, guys.